Hooray for Hollywood. I've got a bad feeling about the. Oh, hello there. I am Stan the Movie Man, and this is my weekly movie review. It's a doubleheader this week, as I went to see two very different films that I feel surprisingly similar about. The first film is The Last Witch Hunter. It stars Vin Diesel, Elijah Wood, Rose Leslie, Michael Caine, and more. It is the story of a 13th century witch hunter. He goes out, a guy named Calder, played by Vin Diesel. He and a bunch of other men go out and search for the witch queen that is responsible for the plague that has been killing all of their families in their villages. During the search for this witch queen inside a giant gnarled tree, Calder finds her and is able to run his flaming sword through her, but she lives long enough to drive her hand into his chest and curses him with immortality. Jump to the present, and Calder is still out searching for witches, but there is a truce between Calder and, or rather, the people who oversee Calder, which is a series of priests known as Dolan, and the witches. They come to a truce, and as long as the witches do not perform magic on humans, they're allowed to exist. Otherwise, Calder hunts them down and kills them. His Dolan, he's assigned a Dolan. The 37th, or 36th actually, is played by Michael Caine. But the day after he retires, he dies. It turns out he doesn't die of natural causes. He's killed by a witch. And that starts an adventure with the 37th Dolan, played by Elijah Wood, and a young bartender witch named Chloe, played by Rose Leslie, as to what's going on. Apparently, there's trouble afoot. You know, this is a perfectly serviceable action fantasy movie. It just isn't terribly special. I liked the design of it. I liked the kind of world that is created. But really, once you get down to it, it's not anything unique, really, or special. It's fine. It has a pretty predictable plot progression, although there was a couple of twists that did sort of make me go, oh, that's interesting. But it doesn't really shake up the world very much. You know, it's fine. It's perfectly fine. I don't think it's as bad as its Rotten Tomatoes score, and I'm giving it 3 stars. Now, let's move on to my second film, Steve Jobs, which is getting a lot of Oscar buzz for Michael Fassbender, who plays the title role. It also stars Seth Rogen, Katherine Waterston, also Kate Winslet, Jeff Daniels, and more. It is, of course, about the life of Steve Jobs, how, it follows his life from the introduction of the iMac, the Macintosh, which was a huge failure. His moving over, starting another company called Next, a huge failure. And then his eventual return to Apple, and he's about to introduce the iMac. The movie spends the majority of its time making Steve Jobs look like a terrible person. And then it sells out at the end, turning him into somebody that's all squishy and warm and huggy-feely. Maybe not huggy-feely, but somebody who, acts almost decent. And I just felt like that was a sellout. It really works hard to make you hate him. Dislike him greatly. Maybe hate's a strong word. But then it wants to have its cake and eat it too by turning him into a guy that, seems like he might be likable. And perhaps Jobs was that way in real life. I, however, real life and the movies are two very different things. And you know, the people who knew Steve Jobs, Wozniak for one, his family for another, say that the movie is largely made up, and it's a movie, so it's going to be largely made up, even if it's about real things. Um, you know, Fassbender does a fantastic job in the role of Steve Jobs. He embodies him through various phases of his life, going from a young man in the garage with Wozniak through to 1998. That's the when the film ends. It just feels like it lost the belief in its own convictions about what it was trying, the story it was trying to tell. Maybe it is an attempt at a redemptive story, and if it is, it doesn't work because the redemption doesn't feel earned. It just feels like we've got to do something to make this monster seem like a decent human being. Fassbender's performance is fantastic, and if he gets nominated for an Oscar, it will be earned. But the movie, I feel like, is just sort of a greatest hits of Jobs' life and career, and it feels a little thin and superficial. You know, I just I didn't feel like I was learning anything about the man that I couldn't do from a quick, you know, search on a Apple computer. So, you know, Fassbender's performance is well worth the price of admission. The movie itself is not necessarily. Again, it gets 3 stars. Go to StanTheMovieMan.com to read my complete review. You can also follow me on Twitter at MovieManStan and send email to StanTheMovieMan at Comcast.net. Till next time, toodles.